everybody. Duane Patterson here, instead of Hugh Hewitt, coming to you live from Orlando, Florida, the site of the 50th gathering of the American Legislative Exchange Council. Now, why am I here, you ask, and not Hugh, who should have been here by now? Well, Hugh is a man of many talents. He is a man of many gifts. In fact, you might consider Hugh to be somewhat of a prophet. Much of the country saw what happened in a Delaware courtroom yesterday between the lawyers for the Department of Justice, Hunter Biden's lawyers. They all got together. They thought they had a plea deal arranged for Hunter Biden, and that kind of fell apart. We got details on that in a second, but Hugh kind of predicted that that would happen. He had lots of reasons why that he talked about in his Washington Post article, and so he's kind of a prophet in this thing. And as we've seen throughout the course of history, sometimes bad things happen to prophets. And a bad thing happened to this prophet. This particular prophet, Hugh, is spending purgatory, at least for one night, in Newark, New Jersey. And I think we've got Hugh on the line now. Hugh, I have one question for you. Do you have anything to declare?
Oh, do I have something to declare?
Yeah, don't go to England.
Don't go to Newark, and don't fly United. Good morning, Generalissimo, and I'm so glad you have a producer unlike me, because Lee Habeeb is there with you. But I want to pay homage to you. While I left Maine at 9:30 yesterday, arrived at 11:30 in Newark yesterday, I then was delayed 6 times by United in a drip, 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 drip fashion every 45 minutes to an hour. Switched gates 4 times, and then they left us here all night. But I'll get there eventually. But I'm missing my second favorite show of the year, my American Legislative Exchange Council show. My favorite show of the year is tomorrow's American Legislative Exchange Council show. But I just want to say thank you, because you somehow managed to schlep all the equipment from California to Orlando the same day I just tried to get from Maine to Orlando. You got there, set up the equipment, and you're ready to go. And you and I were talking last night. I don't know how many producers in the Salem Radio Network could do that. And you said you bet there weren't 3. And I said, I don't actually think there are 2. I only think there's 1.
I was trying to be humble.
Huh?
I was trying to be humble.
You're don't be humble. It's a magnificent accomplishment. Go forth and conquer with Lee. But I do not know how Lee escaped New Jersey. I've been texting with former Governor Chris Christie yesterday, and I said, why is Newark Airport this way? And he said it was working fine 5.5 years ago when I left office. It's Murphy's fault. So Lee Habeeb can tell you about Newark. Now I got to go board my airplane. I'll see you later today. Say hi to Lisa Nelson and all our friends from ALEC for me, please.
I'll
see you in the morning.
I'll see you in the morning. Thanks, Hugh.
Bye.
So let's get to the news of the day. And the big story that everybody's talking about is this shocked amazement that everybody saw in a Delaware courtroom as Judge Mary Ellen Noreika looked at the 2 sides, which really was the same side if you really want to look at it, and said, no, we're not doing this deal. Are you kidding me? The deal as set up between Hunter Biden's lawyers and the Department of Justice would have basically given a slap on the wrist to Hunter Biden for multiple felonies, and basically not just given him essentially a judicial pardon, if you will, but freedom of any prosecution for the rest of time, which nobody gets that deal. That's just craziness. Catherine Herridge of CBS News kind of summed up what happened pretty well. Here is cut number 2, Harley.
The 3-hour hearing in the courthouse behind me was extremely dramatic and tense. I was sitting for the most part of the hearing about 20 feet behind the president's son, and you could see in my view that he became increasingly anxious and somewhat agitated as it became clear that this plea agreement on the tax and the gun charge was in jeopardy. Just a few minutes ago, the federal judge Mary Ellen Noreika has told the court that she is deferring a decision on the plea agreement for the president's son. She said she cannot accept or reject it. She's asked the parties for additional information. She told them at one point, quote, you are telling me just to rubber stamp this deal that is form over substance. She had serious concerns not only about the agreement on misdemeanor tax charges, but also on this diversion program for the felony gun offense. She said she believed there may be elements and provisions within that agreement that are unconstitutional in her view. She's given the parties 14 days to come back with filings to help clarify her questions, and she could reach a decision in about 30 days whether she will accept or reject this plea agreement. But this was an extraordinary scene that unfolded in the federal courthouse behind me, and just based on the demeanor of the president's son's legal team and Hunter Biden, one of a lot of disappointment, Major.
The only place I disagree with Catherine Herridge is that it was an extraordinary scene. Honestly, if you looked at what the deal allegedly was, that's what was extraordinary, because nobody gets that deal. Anybody looking at this would read what the proposed plea deal was and say, there is nothing fair or just about this. This whole thing is crazy. So it's not surprising that a judge looked at this and went, no, I'm not going to sign on to this. Tom Cotton, Arkansas's fine senior senator, who is a regular weekly guest on Hugh's show, was on with our buddy Larry Kudlow on Fox Business Channel yesterday. Here's what he said about the, quote, two sides, Hunter Biden's lawyers and the DOJ, cut 5.
Well, Larry, I don't think Chuck Schumer is going to be hopping on anytime soon here in the Senate, but thankfully we have great leaders like Andy Barr and Kevin McCarthy and Jim Jordan, James Comer in the House, who have conducted numerous oversight hearings, who have exposed via some of these new whistleblowers the efforts to cover up all of Hunter Biden's crimes and the way they implicate President Biden. Now, if we had a liberal media that did not act like a phalanx of bodyguards around Joe Biden and the Biden family, we might have known before today that the plea agreement between the Biden Department of Justice and Hunter Biden last month purported to give him total immunity for all past crimes and misdeeds. And that's what blew up the plea deal today. It wasn't the judge rejecting it. It's that the U.S. attorney sheepishly admitted that they couldn't guarantee it. And Hunter Biden's lawyers, who obviously knew that that's what they were pursuing, refused to go forward with the plea deal unless it gave him blanket immunity for all crimes. So let's be clear. There's no confusion here between these two sides. When the Biden Department of Justice and Hunter Biden's criminal defense attorneys sit down, those aren't adversaries negotiating. Those are co-conspirators strategizing. Now what the Department of Justice should do is what they should have done all along. Allow their investigators to pursue the facts wherever they lead and charge Hunter Biden with the crimes that he has committed and take it to a jury trial.
100%.
He's absolutely right. They are not two different sides negotiating. They are basically co-conspirators that are strategizing how best to get through this and keep the big man, the big guy, happy. I want to just play a little bit of Jonathan Turley, who was on with Fox News yesterday analyzing this. And another question the judge asked, which is a very good question, what about Hunter Biden and whether he was registered to be a FARA agent, a Foreign Agent Registration Act candidate? Cut number 4.
Well, I think it does support that view. You know, the problem with a plea agreement is you can't actually type in wink and nod, right? I mean, the problem with this agreement is that the judge read it and said, what is this? And part of the obligation of the court is to make sure that the defendant and the government are very clear on what the agreement means. And they weren't, and it broke down with the most basic questions. That was what was so surprising here, is that these are the types of questions as a defense counsel you work out with prosecutors in advance. But she basically asked one question, and the whole darn thing fell apart. And so the question now is, where do you go from here? It's like a wedding where both the bride and the groom objected, and everyone else is sitting there saying, wait, how did we get here, and where do we go from here?
Well, I know that you don't know, right, why, but why did they end up here? How did they get to this point in this courtroom today where they didn't agree on what they had actually agreed on?
Yeah, I think part of the problem is they really did want to cap out the case. The Department of Justice wanted to cap this investigation. But they didn't want to say that it was now over. From the very beginning, the Hunter Biden team said that this is a closeout plea agreement, that there'd be nothing left to investigate.
Okay, we'll pick it up. We'll pick it up a little bit later once we have more time. But we're going to get back to talking about why we're actually here with the American Legislative Exchange Council. Just know that Hugh called his shot, and also that the corruption of Joe Biden is going to be in sharper focus for the next few weeks and months, and we're going to cover every bit of it on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Duane Patterson in for Hugh. We'll be back right after the break. Everybody, Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt today. From the 50th gathering of the American Legislative Exchange Council in Orlando, Florida, I am joined by its national chairman, one of the rock stars of the legislative class, Florida State Representative Danny Perez. You've heard him on the show before several times. He is a dynamo, and I'm glad to have you back in the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me once again. This is one of the parts that I look forward to when I come to ALEC.
I've been wanting to talk to you for the last couple of weeks, especially after what we saw the Vice President say about the Florida education reform, totally gaslighting one little aspect of a guideline and attributing a conclusion of that piece of guideline that the guideline doesn't actually say. And now we've learned that there is an AP African American Studies course that the left wanted Florida to embrace, that the state decided we are not going to have anything to do with, that embraces exactly what Kamala Harris is complaining about. Can you, for the audience, kind of explain what the controversy is and what the Florida education reform actually did?
This was basically an excuse for Kamala Harris to come to Florida and make up, or at least attempt to make up, what one of her greatest problems is, which is the mass exodus of African Americans from the Democratic Party. And we're seeing it in our own backyard in Florida. And she is not getting enough credit for being an African American in the African American community. That's her pitch. And so she's chosen this topic to make Florida seem as like if it's a racist state. Florida is not a racist state. Let's get that out in the open. Quite the opposite. We just finished passing the largest curriculum of African American history in the entire country. And when we passed that curriculum, we heard from the White House, zip, nothing. They didn't say a damn thing. They kept more quiet than I'd ever seen because it didn't work to their narrative. But what we actually passed was an extensive history made up by African American scholars, most of being African Americans themselves,
right.
Most of which I guarantee you probably didn't even vote for the governor themselves. But that being said, they understood that this curriculum was important to the future generations of Florida. And in that curriculum, what is in that curriculum? In that ESA curriculum, we are talking about the history, and through the history, we are explaining exactly what it is that the slaves had to go through and exactly what the work was that they had to perform. And in doing so, how their life ended up turning out. But in no way, shape, or form are we saying that in this curriculum, slavery had a positive component.
No, you're just teaching what happened.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. And look, I have to say that there's nothing Kamala Harris can do to make up for the exodus of African Americans in Florida. She's toast. The Democratic Party is toast. I'm seeing it. The Democratic Party is seeing it in the African American community and the Hispanic community. Here in Miami, my own backyard, they're losing Hispanics by the second.
Wow. Lee.
Yeah, we wanted to play a clip for you, Danny. Becky Pringle, who's the president of the NEA, was in Orlando 2 weeks ago, and this is going to be clip one on the Lee clip one. And this is what she had to say about your state. Again, she was in Orlando with 6,000 delegates from the NEA, 18,000 more listening online. Take a listen.
Come here because our children are here. We have come here because our colleagues are here. We have come to Florida because educators and students and their communities are being attacked by laws that threaten their safety and question their humanity, that block their access to every basic right that defines the word freedom.
I think you've got to end it here. But Danny, let's hear your response to this.
Where do you guys get these
Because
clips?
by the way, Danny, you're getting all these people moving to Florida. Has she looked at the data from United Van's survey, seeing how many people, including, by the way, 2 weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal wrote the story about more African Americans moving to the South than any time in history. More African Americans live in the South now, 56%, than the rest of the country. What world is Becky Pringle living in,
She's
Danny?
not reading the room very well, is she, Danny?
No, she's not. I mean, I hadn't seen that clip, guys, but wow, good morning. Good morning. I mean, if I wasn't awake before that, I am on fire right now. Here's the wildest part. In the universal school choice, universal school voucher bill that we just passed, it gives every single family, approximately in Miami, it's approximately $8,000 in order for the parent to choose what school is best for their child. Do you know the one of the groups that is using this the most, and we are thankful for it? It's the African American community. It's parents saying, I know what's best for my child, I know the right curriculum, and this is the school that I want them to go to. They're sending their children there, and we are watching the results for all children in the state of Florida. I mean, they are skyrocketing. K through 12 in Florida is one of the best in the entire country, and it happens because of school choice. And on both sides of the aisle, people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, they're voting for the universal school choice. I mean, I would tell her, I mean, wow, I can't get over that clip. I would tell her, come to Tallahassee and talk to the Democrats about it. Because you're going to see that a lot more of them understand what universal school choice is. We're not taking away their basic rights. Quite the opposite. We're giving parents more rights for choice than ever before. So look, they keep going back to these talking points because it's what they think moves the needle. Every time I see a clip like that, I feel more and more sure that as I walk into being Speaker next year, we're not only going to keep the majority in the state of Florida, in the House and the Senate, but we're going to grow it, because talking points like that, it doesn't work for the Democrats.
Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt, joined by Lee Habeeb and State Representative out of Florida and incoming Speaker Danny Perez, who is the National Chairman for the American Legislative Exchange Council. Danny, ALEC, this is the 50th gathering of ALEC, and I'm sure that there are ebbs and tides of who's leading the dance between the state legislatures and the people that run ALEC. I'm sure there are periods of time when ALEC is the one really trying to push the state legislators on certain issue sets and trying to lead the dance, if you will. And then there are times when there is an issue set that is just sweeping the landscape, and ALEC is trying to kind of catch up and keep up with it and just keep the horses in the lane. Is this education issue what everybody's talking about, and is that really kind of leading ALEC, or is ALEC trying to lead the legislatures?
ALEC has led on education more than any other organization or like-minded organization in the entire country. Education has been at the front end of the model policy that ALEC has been able to roll out for other states to use, alongside some of the I mean, look, it's not just education. It's about school choice. It's about the voucher system.
Sure.
But more importantly, you know, what we're here to celebrate with ALEC is 50 years of success of free markets, federalism, limited government. I mean, that is what ALEC has stood for 50 years. But what I am challenging people, and what Lisa Nelson has agreed to do, is what does the next 50 years of ALEC look like? We have been so successful for 50 years, but the next generation of like-minded individuals on morals and on principles, you're starting to see a different demographic. I think I'm a perfect example of that. Parents were born in Cuba, came over here in 1969 because this country gave us every opportunity and every freedom under the sun. What does that next generation look like? And so we're starting to roll that out and we're opening our tent, and we want everyone to understand, regardless of what walk of life you come from, your home is at ALEC. We give the greatest opportunity through the policies that we're passing at this conference and then rolling out through all states in a nonpartisan manner. This isn't about Republican or Democrats. This is about opportunity. This is about free markets. This is about allowing people to flourish without government getting in their way. Only one organization truly stands for that amongst many, the most, and in such a tough time where the media is coming after us and coming after like-minded individuals, ALEC takes most of those bullets, but it's okay. I don't mind taking that bullet as a national chairman. It's for the betterment of my children. I got 2 little ones and 1 on the way, 4, 3, and in the belly. And when I'm an old man.
Oh, congratulations! What's that?
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think the last time we talked that wasn't.
No, we're mass producing down in Miami. And
we
got to
that.
make sure that we have as many conservatives.
We
as
like
possible.
that. We like that, Lee.
And so on the ESA front, and this is one of the big ones. Talk about Iowa and Arizona and all these states doing it. Are parents using it? Are we selling the win? Because if we don't sell the win, we've got a problem. Do parents know about it? How are we marketing this? How is ALEC playing a part of this? And then what happens to the school districts and what happens to the unions? If tens and hundreds of thousands of parents use this, that's fewer teachers.
Well, that's an interesting question when you bring up the unions. One, Iowa's doing a great job. Speaker Toma in Arizona has been doing a great job. He's been doing a great job because he was majority leader, and they've been leading the charge. So has Florida. What we're seeing is that in Florida, it wasn't just about the ESA model. It was about the unions. You're absolutely right, Lee. The unions, I mean, they have their backs up against the wall because, what we have been able to do is we've been able to decertify some of these unions that sometimes have a minority of the teachers in their own organization and don't truly represent the greater population of teachers, yet they're making some of these radical decisions in order for them to move their own personal agenda forward as opposed to the agenda of the children and school choice and what is in the best interest of those children in the state of Florida. So I do agree with you that because of the ESA model, some of these unions are going to begin to decertify, and we've been able to restructure some of the fees that are happening within the unions in this own bill. But yes, teachers are using it. We've rolled out this model within the last 6 months in Florida, and Step Up for Children has done a phenomenal job. John Kirtley's done a phenomenal job in Florida with rolling out this program alongside the state of Florida. But it has been used more than you can imagine. I think here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell the governor he's got to put me on a payroll because I'm basically getting more phone calls on ESA and rolling people through this program than he can ever imagine. Everyone in Miami is like, is this true? What do you mean you're giving us school choice and you're giving us the voucher program on funds that we can move to whatever school we choose is best for our children? Are you really letting us decide what's best for our children? Yeah, absolutely. That's Florida. Welcome. We love you. But it's very real. People are using it.
Well, the radical idea of money following the parent and not the school district, this is the revolution in the end. I mean, it unhinges the money from the school directly, and it gives parents the best choice possible. Just talk about that if you can.
Yeah, it is. And what it's doing is it's challenging some of these schools that were coasting because no matter what, they knew that money was going to roll into the Department of Education and the school board at the right time. Well, now they have to actually go fight and compete for those dollars because if not, the children are going to leave. People say, what happens to some of our schools? Eventually they're just not going to be able to stay open if everyone's leaving. Well, if parents aren't wanting to send their children to a specific school, it's for a reason. That school needs to look in the mirror and say, what can we do better to make sure that our kids are prospering? Because the parents themselves don't feel like their children are prospering. Well, look in the mirror, buddy. It's time for you to step up. And if you don't step up, the parents are going to have the choice to send them somewhere else.
See, America, that's what I told you. This guy is a rising star. This guy is the future of what we want coming out of state politics and bridging into ALEC leadership. Danny Perez, you're going to be back tomorrow with Hugh. Always good to talk to you. Thanks for being here, and we will see you around the conference.
Thanks, Duane. Thanks, Lee. I hope everyone has a great day.
Danny Perez, everybody. Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt. Joined by the big boss, Lisa Nelson, will be back right after the break. This is Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt. Stick around. We'll be right back. 51 minutes past the hour, Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt today as he is trying to wing his way from Newark, New Jersey to the greater confines of Orlando, Florida, where we are at the 50th gathering of the American Legislative Exchange Council. I am joined by its CEO, Lisa Nelson, who has put together another fabulous gathering. Lisa, welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Sorry Hugh is not here, but I am really happy to be here because you can't leave this place without feeling good about what's coming up in the future.
Well, that's right, Duane. The amazing energy that came out of our kickoff and our opening yesterday was just palpable. We had over 1,000 people in the room, standing room only for Governor Ron DeSantis as our opening speaker. We also had great conversation about this topic of ESG, environmental, social, and governance tactics by the left, and trying to rein that in a little bit and get back to neutral for businesses so that they can operate. And today we've got another great lineup, so we're really excited to have everybody in the free state of Florida.
There is energy, and it's palpable here. Now, what is the power source behind that energy? What issue set is the overarching issue set that is developing that energy? What is driving people the most?
I am so glad you asked that, because when we sat down and thought about what are the kind of huge issues shaping this last year, I have to say that education is the big one. And that's not to say that other issues, tax cuts and energy and everything else isn't being discussed in the States. But education this year has made just huge gains in terms of giving parents the right to choose kids for themselves. Our lineup this morning is an amazing speaker, Kathy Wood, who is a financial investor, but mostly focused on innovation and education. So she and Dr. Arthur Laffer, who was her professor back in the day, are going to talk about innovation and looking for new ways to kind of shape education. And then at lunch, we've got a number of winners. I think it's 5 winners of the Yass Prize. Jeff Yass is a philanthropist out of Pennsylvania who's spending his money trying to create new opportunities and new ways of learning and create new schools for kids all over the country. So he's been giving out a Yass Prize to the most creative, innovative schools all over the country for years now, and we're going to be highlighting and showcasing them.
ALEC.org is where you go to learn more, ALEC.org. What has been the growth model of ALEC over the last couple of years? How many more are we just like expanding more than you had even hoped for?
You know, an interesting stat is, and we knew this was coming in 2020 and 2022, and that is that state legislative chambers are turning over in record numbers. And, you know, that maybe that's a generational shift, maybe it's just the movement of the times, but a lot of districts and a lot of states are seeing rapid turnover, 40% in Idaho, 40% in Virginia this year. And we thought, ALEC's going to need to really be on our game and make sure that we attract new legislators. 40% of our attendees at this meeting are new first-time attendees and legislators. So we're outpacing the actual turnover in the states, which means we're not only are we getting those new elected officials, but we're also retaining and getting some of the elected officials that have not made it to an ALEC meeting, and they're starting to see they need to be here.
That's outstanding. Lee?
You know, digging a little deeper in the ESA, so all this money is now freed up. Take Iowa. If we could drill down there, you gave me some numbers about how many parents are actually using this. All that capital gets to the parent. This allows for a lot of education innovation, to your earlier point. You're freeing up capital for entrepreneurs to come in and offer parents a variety of other options than the traditional school model. So talk about Iowa particularly.
Absolutely. You know, I think nobody's more surprised than Governor Kim Reynolds, who has just took that issue very personally and made it one of her signature issues for this year. I think they anticipated something like 12,000 students to take advantage of that ESA program. They put it in the budget, appropriated the funds, and in the first 24 hours, I was getting texts from our legislative friends in Iowa saying not only had they already broken that 12,000 student threshold, but they had over 25,000 applicants within 72 hours. I think John Wills might be on the show later today. He's the Speaker Pro Tem from Iowa. He was the partner with Governor Reynolds to get that across the finish line. And if you remember, we talked about this, I think the last year, Iowa couldn't get that bill across the finish line in 2022. And with the help of additional new legislators, like we were talking about, Duane, they were able to get that done, and it was the signature bill and her first bill across.
Great news, Lisa. Great news.
Lisa, we're about ready to wrap up the hour. I know you're super busy. You've got a conference to lead, and again, just from afar, kind of leapfrogging in every 6 months or so. It's just amazing to see how much growth and how much more advanced these conferences are getting, each one, and that's all you. That's because of Lisa Nelson and her leadership of ALEC. Thanks for having us back one more time.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
We will talk to you again probably before the conference is over. I'm sure Hugh's going to want to talk to you as well. We're going to talk about policy and politics in the Lone Star State with a state senator there named Phil King when we come back after the break. Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt. Stick around to Hour 2 of the Hugh Hewitt Show. We'll be right back. The Hugh Hewitt Show rolls along without Hugh Hewitt, who is boarding a plane in Newark, New Jersey on his way to Orlando, Florida. site of the 50th gathering of the American Legislative Exchange Council. The nation's finest legislators all gathered together talking policy and politics, and it's just a sea of energy floating around this place, and it's really great to be here. Duane Patterson and Lee Habeeb are filling in for Hugh today. I'm joined by Texas State Senator Phil King, who is a repeat guy. He's been on the show before. You've heard him with Hugh, and we learned something during the break that you may find of interest, and that is there is potentially going to be a new entry into the Guinness Book of World Records, and in this case, for tax cuts. Now, you see, they do everything bigger in Texas, and apparently, Phil King, they do tax cuts bigger in Texas, too. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
So tell us about this. Tell us what this tax cut's all about, and what you're actually trying to do with it.
Well, we walked in, Texas, we really try to do a good job we try to be fiscally conservative, which simply means don't spend all the money.
Right.
And keep regulation low. And
I'm from California. We don't know this.
I know, and that's why I'm mentioning that. And we try not to take on debt, and we try to pay for things that are big when we get the money. And this year we walked into what is unprecedented, I think, in American history, of having a $33 billion tax surplus, meaning that $33 billion above what we had budgeted to spend came in tax revenue because of the economy in Texas. And then we had a savings account of about $20 billion. And so we took that money and we did what we believe to be the largest tax cut in world history of $18 billion. Most of that will be in the form of property tax to homeowners and business owners. And then also we doubled an exemption in our business franchise tax that will take 67,000 small businesses completely off the tax roll.
That is astounding. Now, when you talk education, that's something that resonates with everybody. When you talk that kind of tax cuts, is that still a big deal with Texans? I mean, do they still react the same way they react to education issues or the border or immigration issues?
Well, I mean, I think everybody's excited about getting to have money sent back to them. The average homeowner in Texas will receive $1,400 in tax reduction on their home property taxes.
Okay, that's real money.
It is real money. And in addition to that budget, we hope to do ESAs, Education Savings Account. We're going to come back in October in a special session. And we have set $5 billion out of that surplus aside to fund the startup for that ESA program, as well as hopefully some teacher pay raises and other things. We are growing so quickly. Again, you don't want to go into debt, but we had the extra funding, I think, from good fiscal management and a fast growth economy. So we increased our transportation for road construction, highway construction, 196% because we've got the money to do it. Creating a $1 billion water infrastructure fund, wow. $1.5 billion broadband infrastructure fund, which pushes that broadband high-speed internet out to our rural communities where they can have stronger economic development and better education opportunities. So again, the key is don't spend the money until you have it. Don't borrow. But when you've got it, give as much back as you can and use the rest to buy those big ticket items that you've been needing to invest in, such as water and broadband and roads and education savings accounts.
Lee Habeeb, you're from Jersey. I'm from California. What is this voodoo he speaks of waiting until the money comes in?
Well, Senator King, you said something interesting about we have one economy, and that is a national economy, but yet very variant results. California, New Jersey, compared to, say, Texas. You're on the board of directors. Talk about taxes nationwide and where people are moving from and to, because in the end, people are voting with their feet, and they're voting to places, well, that are more hospitable as it relates to taxes. Talk about these things.
Well, Texas is growing at about 1,000 people a day, and that's the legal immigration. That's people moving from other states or moving to Texas from another country, but moving there legally. And we got a little nervous about that at first when that growth started, because we said all these people moved from California and from the Northeast, and we thought, great, they're going to come and they're going to bring the same bad policies they voted for, they're going to vote for when they get to Texas. And so we started, doing some polling and some surveys, and we found out that's really not the case. The people that are moving are escaping. The people that are moving are coming to Texas because they want economic opportunity, they want better schools, they want freedom, they want less regulation. They want a reasonable judicial system, and they're just coming to have a place that they can raise a family and start a business or be a part of a business, and they're voting Republican.
You talked about the number of people moving in legally versus the number of people that were moving in illegally. Let's talk, because that's the issue among other states in the country that resonates more than most, and that is the immigration problem, the border problem. What is Texas doing down there to try to combat what the federal government is doing to allow it?
However bad you think the situation is at the border from watching Fox News or what, let me tell you, it is much, much worse. It's 1,254-mile border. There is no government in northern Mexico. The cartels are the government in northern Mexico. If you have a traffic accident in northern Mexico, the cartels literally show up and work those accidents instead of the police. They're well-funded, they're well-trained, and they're evil. On the other side of the border, we will spend over the next 2 years, just Texas, over $5 billion trying to do law enforcement to deal with human trafficking and drug trafficking. And of course, I don't care where you are in the United States, rural, downtown New York, every narcotic you can think of cost half what it cost 2 years ago. The reason is, and demand is up some, but the real reason is it's a free market and supply is up heavy because it's just pouring across the border. Today's a hot day in Texas, so it'll be slower. There'll probably be only 2,000 to 4,000 people illegally cross into Texas today. But by September, the numbers will be back up to 10,000 a day. The feds try to hide those numbers. We see them, we estimate them, we'll arrest or apprehend probably 1,000 people a day. If we can find a reason to put them in jail for criminal trespass, for drug trafficking, for human trafficking, or because they've got some other crime that we know of, we'll put them in jail and keep them. It fills up our jails and prisons. Those that we can't, we have to turn over to Border Patrol, and Border Patrol turns over to ICE, and then they get shipped out by planes, trains, and automobiles in the middle of the night, and all the other stories that you hear.
So you have to fight a kind of a two-front battle here, not just against the cartels and who's trying to stream drugs and bodies across the border, but you're having to combat the open hostility of the federal government of you trying to do what they should be doing in the first place. How do you combat what the federal government's trying to do?
Well, of course, interestingly, we just deployed a new system where we're trying to run buoys with nets down the middle of the river so that you can't come across them in key points. And they just instantly filed suit against us for that, so we'll be in court. But it really is, you really feel like, and I hate to use this word, but at times you feel like you're at war with your own federal government. Because, for example, there are some federal lands along the Texas border. They will not let our law enforcement officers, they will not let our Texas Guard and our National Guard go in and try to do any border patrolling, any drug patrolling, any immigration patrolling in those federal lands. They will not let us go on them. So we have to stand outside of them and then try to pick up people and monitor people as they come across.
Lee.
Yeah, you're the former national chairman. You're on the board of directors. Great first 50 years. What are you looking forward to? Are Americans truly understanding that this ground-up revolution from the states was what the founders always envisioned?
I don't know. You know, that our education system, and we just have not done a good job as conservatives of communicating what makes government work. It's not that complicated. You keep regulation low and navigable. You try not to spend all the money. You try to have a good education system so you can have a good workforce, and you kind of let people do their own thing, and usually everything is real successful when you do that. We have not done a good job. The America believes, I think particularly the newer generations, believe that government's role should be very, very heavy and intense in our life, and all that really does is into restrictions and less economic opportunity and on and on. And so I think organizations like ALEC, I think right now we've probably got about 20% of the legislators in the nation a part of ALEC. We're trying to push this message out of freedom and liberty and doing things the way the founders envisioned, which was having the states be the leaders of America, and the federal government have its very limited roles under the enumerated Constitution.
Well, Phil King, Texas State Senator, thank you very much for all that you've done. Thanks for the tax cuts that you have put through in Texas. It's got to be a model for other states. I'm sure other people here at the conference are going to be perking their ears up at how much you guys are able to roll back on taxes. Thanks for what you're doing on the border and helping keep the country safe where the federal government is not doing that role. And thanks for helping out with all of our friends at the American Legislative Exchange Council. Thanks for being here, Phil.
Thank you.
Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt. I will be joined by Lee Habeeb after the break, and then we will have all sorts of other surprises straight ahead on the next segment of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt, who is going to be joining us tomorrow on the second of our 2 days of the American Legislative Exchange Council shows here in Orlando, Florida, at the 50th gathering. I am joined by another rock star in the state legislator ranks, and that is Patricia Rucker of West Virginia. And Patricia Rucker is an absolute mover and shaker in the education movement, but you have to understand what she's been able to do, and we will get there. To understand that, you've got to understand the bio and the background of where she came out of to get to where she's at now. Because, Patricia, I know you're probably tired of welcome to the show, by the way. I know you're probably tired of telling the bio, and you think people are tired of hearing the bio. When you've got a good story to tell, you've got to tell that story. So give us the background of who Patricia Rucker is and how you got to West Virginia.
So I'm a first-generation immigrant, as you brought up. My father was a journalist, and he got a job in Washington, D.C., covering news. And so the whole family came, and I grew up in the suburban part of Washington, D.C., Montgomery County, Maryland. And we always planned to return to Venezuela. That was always our plan. We loved Venezuela, and we would go every other summer back home, and all of our family still remained there. And it was just our one little, nuclear family. And when I met my husband, that's when I kind of realized, yeah, I might stay. And we got married, and when I had my firstborn, I knew I wanted to raise my children instead of putting them into daycare. And so we had to move someplace cheaper, and that led us to West Virginia, and we've been there since 2000, and we've had 5 children. And in 2004, was very, very honored to finally get the opportunity to become a citizen of the United States. I applied for citizenship when I got married, but it took from 1996 until 2004 to go through the process. It's not easy,
right?
But completely and totally worth it. And yes, like your grandparents, I mean, I can tell you, I will never forget my naturalization ceremony, and I do kind of celebrate it every single year, which is October 8th, because it is, I mean, it not only the opportunity to have a chance to vote, but to me, it's about look at the American dream. It is still alive. It is still possible. You can still come to the United States, learn a new language, become part of the community, and now be an elected official, which I never thought when I became a citizen in 2004. But truly and honestly, I'm just so grateful for the opportunity and the beauty and the freedom. And it's one of the reasons for why I ran for office, and one of the reasons for why I'm here at ALEC, because ALEC defends all those things.
And you, since you've been in office, you haven't just been sitting in the back just casting votes. You've actually been impacting the world and actually making a difference, especially in the education movement. Tell people what West Virginia has done on the school front.
So West Virginia, I will tell you, when I got elected, had absolutely zero school choice, just nothing. There's no choices at all. And it hurt me because I knew that there were families who, like mine, did not find a fit in their local public school where they were districted to attend. And there was just zero options. You could, there was a process for transferring to another public school, but it was a very, very difficult process, and very few ever went through. So I wanted there to be more choice. I wanted there to be more freedom, but more importantly, like, I felt in my heart that it should be about the kids and what's best for them, not the district, not the building. Like, you can just tell when your decisions are coming from a place of what is the most important thing for that child versus, wait a second, is this going to hurt somebody's salary? Is someone going to, lose out position, because like that should not be the priority of the decision. And definitely for the parents, I can tell you, I mean, when I ran for office, I heard many, many stories. Now, the majority of people are happy in their public school that they attend, but there was not a single person who did not tell me, but my cousin or my best friend's child or my neighbor. So everyone knows of someone who is not thriving, who needs to get out. And yet, what can we do about it, right? And they're just sharing these stories with you. So in 2019, I attempted for the first time to really push for some sort of school choice, and it did not work. It failed. But I learned a lot from it. And that's one of the things about being an educator. I don't give up.
And you don't give up.
And I pretty much promised my voters that if I got reelected, I was going to come back, and I was going to make certain that that little bit of school choice that I had to really fight very hard and failed to get through, well, it was going to make that look like pathetic. And so I pretty much challenged the unions to get rid of me, and they tried, I can assure you, but I did win re-election. And after that re-election, I managed to get through both houses, and the governor signed a bill for universal education savings account in the state of West Virginia. And
that makes such a huge difference, Lee. This is everything you want in a state legislature, right?
It is indeed, and we're going to play you a clip because for all those kids who are still hostages in West Virginia public schools or choose it, these are some of the things that are coming at them in terms of the curriculum and indoctrination. We want to play you a clip from the head of the National Education Association. You had just discussed unions. This is the big one. And this is Becky Pringle, only 2 weeks ago here in Orlando, talking about the people and the state of Florida. Take a listen to this.
This is Lee Cut One.
Because our children are here. We have come here because our colleagues are here. We have come to Florida because educators and students and their communities are being attacked by laws that threaten their safety and question their humanity, that block their access to every basic right that defines the word freedom. We stand ready to lift up and protect our colleagues and their students. And right here in Florida, we will preserve and strengthen a democracy that was steeped in the power of the Constitution of the United States of America. It is we, the people, NEA, we the people, all of us deserve the right to be truly free.
Patricia, comment. As a social studies teacher and as a member of this group, this trade, this art, this love called teaching, how do you react to something like that?
I can tell you. So this is actually very scary, honestly, very scary. So this is the person who's the president of this National Educators Association.
Yes.
So on one hand, yes, you expect them to be able to speak coherently, and especially about education. You expect them to know their history, where, if you know your history, you know that we do not have a democracy. And actually, our founding fathers were very concerned.
Specific about it, yes.
They did not want the majority rule because they would step over the rights of the minority. Right. So, and it's very clear that her definition of what America is very different than mine. And that's extremely scary. But even more scary is the reaction of the people there clapping and cheering this on. These are educators. That's just...
Yeah, it sounded like a rally. It sounded like a political rally. rather than educators' call to improve students' scores, their test scores, their opportunity, their math skills, their reading skills. Nothing, almost nothing about that.
And they were attacking Florida too. Like Florida has passed laws attacking There has been no attack on educators. It's about empowering parents. Florida has basically stood up for parents.
Now, when you did the education reform stuff in West Virginia, you did not, that was not a straight party line partisan vote, was it?
It was not. I did have bipartisan, not much, but there was some bipartisan.
But it resonates with parents. It's a bipartisan issue. It's not an issue that is strictly a Republican issue. It's one that resonates, and that's why you're seeing it succeed in so many different states. Sure, in a lot of states it's being put through by Republican legislators, but it is an issue that resonates with parents. It's a winning issue.
I will tell you that every single poll I've seen in every single state, it always polls 60% and higher, and that's Republican, Democrat, Independents across the board. Parents, grandparents, community leaders, business leaders. It is definitely a winning issue. It is unfortunate that some try to make it a partisan issue and some try to make it a right versus left. But that's the beauty of school choice. First of all, it's a choice. No one has to choose to do something other than public schools. Every single state in the United States provides you that opportunity for free education. And we can argue as to whether that's constitutional, but that's a different argument. But in every single state in the United States, you have that opportunity, which is a beautiful thing. But nothing should force you into that. And there was never, in the beginning of public education, the idea that you had to send your child there. That came later. Right. And that came, I'm sorry to say, because of lack of trust in parents. Like the laws that got passed in states to say you must attend public schools, those laws came during periods of time in which they did not trust minorities, they did not trust certain demographics, certain groups, and where they wanted to control them. So that by itself should make you a proponent of school choice.
Absolutely. Real quick, Patricia Rucker, we're about out of time. What's next? What's the next thing that legislative you want to accomplish in next session?
Well, I'm focusing on child welfare because that's a
dynamite. Dynamite. That's the next logical next step. Patricia Rucker, it's always great to see you at these ALEC conferences. Thank you very much for coming back. Much success in your political future. It's just an amazing thing to watch the way you guys work.
Thank you.
Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt. I will be joined by Lee Habeeb and another guest from the ALEC conference. ALEC.org is where you go to learn all things about the American Legislative Exchange Council. Duane Patterson in for Hugh. We'll be back right after the break. America, Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt today. He is on his way in from Newark after some weather and air carrier delays, thanks to our friends at United Airlines. He'll be here to talk about that and continue our two-day stint here at the 50th gathering of the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC.org. Lee, kind of a fun show so far. It's an easy show for us to do because, you know, the stories that are being told here and the successes that Americans are having at the state levels that they don't otherwise know about is tremendous.
Well, and the storytelling is just, it's so easy, and it's also so positive. I mean, these ESAs, we're talking real money, Duane. I mean, this is $8,000 a child. And imagine being that single mom and now having that $8,000 in your bank account and to spend money on. You know, my dad was a superintendent of schools, and he was always for this. Because he said, if a parent doesn't want to send their kids to my school, they shouldn't be here. He was a pro-choice superintendent back where you can be.
And one of those amazing stories joins us now. This is Georgia State Representative Mesha Mainor. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Mesha, is that right?
You're right.
Mesha, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
And if memory serves, you used to be a member of the Democratic Party. Is that right?
Used is the right word. I'm no longer.
And you're no longer a Democrat. Now, again, Alex, this is not a political or a partisan operation here. This is a political talk show. You know, we're Republicans here. But the issue set is what concerns us. The policy concerns us more than anything else. What happened to Mesha Mainor from a policy standpoint to get you from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party?
It absolutely was policy. So if it was public safety, if it was school choice, if it was putting people over systems, you name it, down the line. A lot of people think that it was just school choice, but there were multiple policy issues that I just didn't agree with. And it got to a point where I said, well, maybe you're just not a Democrat if they don't believe in any of these things. And they were all things that support my community, which is a heavily Democrat community.
Right.
So
where's your district? What part of Georgia?
I have the best district in Georgia, and that is...
Of course you do.
No, I really do. So if you come and visit Atlanta, most likely you're staying in a hotel in my district. So I represent Midtown, Atlantic Station, Piedmont Park.
Okay, gotcha.
Georgia Tech. I have the most college students in my district than any other district in the state of Georgia. Also the most charter schools in my district than any other district in the state of Georgia.
Lee, so pick up on this thread.
Well, you know, your first job in politics was with the great civil rights leader, John Lewis. And a lot of us have thought this is the civil rights issue of our day.
I do too. I think so, totally.
And so that you're now leading again, always there's courage in being a leader. John had it. I mean, my goodness, the things he had to endure. Talk about the attacks you had from Stacey Abrams, how you survived, and how you think your political career goes forward in your district with this issue.
So I used to work for Congressman John Lewis when I was up in D.C. I went to Howard University. And how do we go forward? We send a message out that I campaigned on 3 years ago. I campaigned on school choice, I campaigned on public safety, and I campaigned on victim rights, which would be putting people over systems. So I went to the Capitol, I fought for those things. It'll be the same things that I do on the Republican side. You know, I'm ready to go forward. I will tell you this, that my district is very diverse. So a lot of people think it's just cut and dry. I don't want to give the numbers in case my opponent is listening, but it is winnable. And last year, the last election, Stacey Abrams and her team, they endorsed my opponent with me being the incumbent. And I still won 3 people in the race with 70% of the vote.
Wow.
Powerful, powerful.
That really is powerful. And that's what I was going to ask you is, I know the political left, the establishment left was going to come after you, and they did. But when you do town halls, what are constituents' reactions? How is this whole transition thing happening amongst voters?
As soon as I announced, my phone started blowing up. It wasn't friends, it was voters saying, we still support you. Emails, text messages. I know a lot of people are seeing a lot of stuff everywhere, and you would think that the world is crumbling around me, but it's not. You know, my constituents are saying, we still support you. We don't care what letter is next to your name. At the end of the day, people care about things that impact them. And I give January 6th as a good example. The world was going crazy around January 6th, but January 6th did not make the children read better or less.
Amen.
January 6th did not put food on their table.
Yep.
So lots of things like that. And so constituents really are not concerned about the macro political world. And I try to stay in the micro kitchen table topics.
Just real quick, we're up against a hard break. Real quick, what does ALEC, this kind of a conference, meant to you? What have you learned here?
I have learned so much, met so many different people in one day. And I hope the listeners go to MeshaMainor.com and find out more about me to support me in this fight.
Spell the first name, spell it out so people get it.
It is MEshaMainor, MeshaMainor.com.
Go and learn about her, America. You're going to be amazed by her story. MeshaMainor.com. Mesha, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
We're seeing you around the conference. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt. We'll be back for Hour 3 right after the break. Stick around. Everybody, Hour 3 of the Hugh Hewitt Show rolls along. Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt today because Hugh got stuck in Newark. And that's pretty much describes everybody in Newark. They are stuck in Newark. He will be here tomorrow as we are in the midst of a 2-day meeting of the American Legislative Exchange Council. And Lee Habeeb and I have been talking about this kind of throughout the show, on air and off air, about how these are the coolest shows in the world to do from a production standpoint and as a conservative, because we spend all year long trying to encourage listeners and viewers to get involved in politics, to support candidates, to knock on doors, to get active in the game. And the blowback we always get is, but you can't do it because the Republicans collapse on this, or this happens here, or that happens there, and so there's not a dime's worth of difference between the parties. What we learn at these conferences and what we were able to display is you can actually see tangible evidence of accomplishments, of moving the ball forward and actually getting things that we all agree with as conservatives done. One of those people that embodies that is Iowa Speaker Pro Tem John Wills, who is somebody we talked to at the last gathering of ALEC. And welcome back, John. Good to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Since we were here last, you had a education bill, an ESA bill, that has been passed. Tell us what happened since the last time we talked and what win Iowa parents have had in the last 6 months.
Well, since I was here last, we were working on the bill, and we'd actually been working on it for 2 years. This last session in January, we passed the bill with a great majority, and so we were able to pass a bill that is universal education savings accounts, and we expected maybe 14,000 people to apply for an educational savings account, and we actually had about 29,000 people apply, so it just kind of blew us out of the water as far as the number of parents that really wanted a choice. They wanted a choice in what their child was going to do or where their child was going to go to school. So it was just amazing.
And this isn't just, again, it's not just a Republican Democrat thing. This is parents. This is parents all over in inner city, suburbs. This is a bipartisan issue that affects all the parents, right?
Yeah. There's proof in the pudding that shows that reading scores improve when you have educational savings accounts, when you have competition. Reading scores improve. Reading scores are an indication of prison, so it really helps those that are at disadvantage the most. And so we can look here, we're in Florida right now, we can look at Florida and see that they were kind of towards the middle bottom of the list as far as reading scores. When they had school choice, when they had competition come in, they are now first, second, or third, depending on which criteria you look at in reading scores.
Was it harder as time went on to get this bill finally passed and over the finish line, or did you feel like there was kind of a critical mass it was gaining because the movement of education reform is kind of sweeping the country and its time was finally here?
Yeah, I think his time is finally here. I think, you had one ESA done about 2 years ago, one last year, and then we were the first this year, but then all of a sudden a slew of educational savings account bills were across the nation. And so I think it was critical mass.
Lee?
There was a great moment when Governor Reynolds was challenged by a journalist about this being an attack on the public schools and depleting resources from the public schools. And I have to read her comment, and I'm wondering if you could comment on it. She said, if public schools aren't teaching those children, then they're not using the resources. And so it's not that they're punishing, it's the parents are choosing, not the legislators, the parents are.
Right.
Talk about that.
Well, it's absolutely. We've got to turn the power back to the parents, and I think that's the message that we need to really resonate. The parents for so long have been kind of taking a back seat, and I think they're just actually somewhat ceding power to the schools. And so now we've got this revolution where parents are saying, hey, we want that power back. We want to be in control of our children's education. And so I think that's kind of what the governor's talking about, is that we need to really look at that.
And how much money are we talking about? How does the mechanism work? How does this ESA work in Iowa?
Right. So we have something called state supplemental allowance in the state. For each child, they receive about $7,600 per child for education. So what we're doing is we're taking that $7,600, instead of sending it to the school of the zip code where that child lives, we're sending it to the school of the parent's choice. And so I think that's the key. So we're making the money follow the child, not having the money follow the institution.
So simple. So simple.
Yeah.
So what else has been on the docket as far as the Iowa legislature since the last time we talked? We just talked about education, but what about like taxes or other issues? What's been the biggest win since the last time we talked?
Well, since the last time we talked, we cut our taxes in half. This last session, we passed property tax reform, which was the biggest property tax reform cut that we have had in the state of Iowa in history. Next year, we're going to do more with property taxes because it's the most hated tax in the state. Nobody likes property taxes because you write that check out in person in the assessor's office. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut income taxes again. I don't know where we're going to go. We have to see what we can afford, but we're going to do some more tax cuts.
Are you trying to aim to phase it out, or what's?
That would be my goal. I'd say if we could get rid of income tax altogether and be more of a consumption tax-based economy, that's a more stable economy. Look at Florida; they've got no income tax. They're looking around, the roads and everything is spectacular here.
Do you have what's the population of Iowa looking like right now? How many people are moving into the state? Is tax policy a draw there, or what's the current demographic?
Part of our tax cut that we did last year, we exempted all retirement income, and so what we were seeing a lot of our retirees were moving to Florida, Arizona, Texas, where they don't have an income tax.
Right.
Well, now we're going to keep those people, and so they may still visit and may still go to Florida, Texas, and Arizona, but they're going to stay residents of the state of Iowa. I think that's an indicator of what could happen with everyone. We've got a lot of people that, a lot of kids. I hear a lot of kids say, listen, I would stay in Iowa, but it costs so much to live here. And so if we can reduce that cost, we'd be able to keep our kids. And so that's one of the things I mentioned earlier that when we were talking, that I've got a few things left that I want to do, but I want to stop the brain drain in the state of Iowa. I want to keep our kids at home. I want to and bring them back too. The ones that have left, I want to bring them back because we've got great things in Iowa.
One of those things will be the corporate tax. Because that will attract more corporations, more jobs, keep the brains in state. What are you doing on the corporate tax side?
Yeah, and the corporate side is really interesting because property taxes are an issue that have kept businesses away. So we've had to offer property tax incentives in order to get businesses to move. So by reducing property taxes, I think that's going to be one thing. But our corporate taxes, they were among the highest in the nation. We've cut them in half, but it's still half, and it's still pretty high. We're probably midway now in the nation on corporate taxes. So I think we need to reduce those corporate taxes as well, and that's going to bring in some high-paying, good jobs in the state of Iowa.
Terrific.
So, with regards to the conference, to ALEC, and you've been coming to ALEC for a long time, the stuff that happens here are you finding that the more you spend time at ALEC, are more people coming up to you to try to do the brain dump to find out how John Wills got stuff accomplished, or are you sponging off of other people to figure out ideas what to do in Iowa next?
I'd say yes to both. Yeah, I think this is a great atmosphere for legislators and for people to come and learn what's happening in other states and then say, you know what, I like that piece, I'm going to take that piece, and then they come to you and say, hey, what's happening in Iowa? And you tell them, and they're like, oh, I like that piece, or I like that piece. And so you're able to, what works for your state, you're going to be able to add and grab and just take the pieces that work for you and for your state. And that's why this is a terrific sharing of ideas and a terrific sharing of networking and that sort of thing. So this is a great atmosphere, great place to learn and take things that will make your state a better place.
So part-time legislature, it's done. You've already done the special session, so pretty much everything is now locked in for the rest of this year, right?
Yep.
And we get ready for the Iowa caucus.
The Iowa caucus has already started.
So how crazy is life going to be in Iowa for the next 6 months?
We've got, 12 candidates or so, maybe 13, who knows at this point, but it's crazy. We've got every one of them coming in, everyone wanting to see you, everyone wanting to shake hands and say hi and all that stuff.
There's nothing like it in American politics.
It's the greatest thing ever.
John Wills, thanks for being here. It's always good to have you here at ALEC. Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt. We'll be back right after the break. Welcome back, America. Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt, 33 minutes past the hour. Every time we come to an ALEC conference, there is an entire slate of guests that ALEC provides for us, and invariably there's always some moving around, weather delays, things happen here and there, and they say, well, there's somebody you need to talk to. And that's who we're talking to right now. This is Alabama Representative Kenneth Paschal, got it, Paschal. And what they gave me is something that just floored me. He is the first black Republican to be elected to the Alabama legislature, the state legislature there, in nearly 140 years. That's astounding. Welcome to the Hugh Show. Good to have you here.
Well, Duane, thank you. And it's a blessing to be here. And I tell people, July the 13th, 2021, yes, there was a historic moment in Alabama, but also it was historic from the point that, we was able to offer evidence that Dr. King's dream is alive in Alabama. He made a statement in 1963.
Right.
He said, I look to the day where people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the contents of their character.
Amen.
So the great people in Alabama voted for me not because of the color of my skin, but because they saw a God-fearing man, a veteran who loved his country, served his country for 21 years. And so I tell people it's not about the color of the skin. We got to get away from that and just get back to saying, what is your values? So it was just an honor to be elected by the people in Alabama.
So let's do the bio. Before you did politics and before you, what took you to the place where you had to run? What's the life story of Kenneth Paschal?
Well, I spent 21 and a half years in the Army. I tell people I could have moved anywhere to any country in the world, but decided to stay here in the United States because I think it's the best place to live. I moved back to Alabama. I was born and raised there. And after retirement, I spent like 11 years actually walking the hallways of Montgomery, our state house, as a private citizen, just working on pro-family legislation because I could see that the family unit was being attacked. And there's not many special interest groups that's trying to look at the foundation. And
right.
So through that process, 10 years of just advocating as a private citizen, taking my retirement from the military, getting my gas tank, trying to travel throughout the state, trying to educate our lawmakers that we got to look at the family structure. Let's get away from the programs that incentivize one-parent homes, a single-parent home, to look at strengthening the family unit that kids need two parents.
Right.
And fast forward to 2020, we had my predecessor. He ran for the appellate court judgeship.
Okay.
And his seat became vacant, and I had several of my good friends, a lot of my veterans friends that said, you need to run for office. I you must be crazy. That is not for me. I said, I'm not going to sell my soul to the system. And they said, that's exactly why you need to run.
You're exactly the type of person that needs to run because you're an activist and you know what needs to be fixed. You just need to go do it.
Right. So even still after that, it took several weeks after praying, just getting 1% clarity. I said, well, I'm going to put all the pieces of the puzzle on the table. If they connect, I'll run for office. Within 2 weeks, everything fell in place. We had 5 candidates in the primary, Republican primary, and the polls were showing Kennedy don't have a chance to win. And so we just went strictly grassroots, knocking on doors, talking to people. My platform was simple, God and country. And people said, why God and country? I said, for 2 reasons. One, you have to ask that question. Then the second reason is that's accountability. God, his word, country, our constitution. And I have to function inside those goalposts. And so sometimes elected officials that do not want to be accountable, they don't want to have accountability. So I put out there early, God and country, that's who I am, that's what I stand for. And so that's what the people elected me based on just loving our country, loving the Lord, and actually being active, involved in my community.
Okay, so how did ALEC find you, or how did you find ALEC? How did that happen?
Well, it goes back to, as I mentioned, about 10 years. I walked the hallways of our state house in Montgomery, advocating for pro-family legislation, mainly looking at family law. And then as you start looking at different issues, you find more issues. And one was, going back to the destruction of the family unit, is we were seeing issues throughout the country where the government was actually trying to counter or reverse the order that God created for parents to make a decision for the kids. And so in 2014, I looked at legislation just trying to codify what our Supreme Court has said since 1923, that parents have a fundamental right, they've been given by God, to direct the kids' upbringing, education, care, custody, and control.
Education.
Yes.
That issue resonates.
And so 2014, we could not get the bill to move at all. And it's just amazing, after my election in 2021, my first legislative session, I pulled the legislation back up from 2014. As mentioned, ALEC, it's their model legislation. And so I introduced that, and I reached out to ALEC. I had just a ground root support throughout different organizations throughout the country and throughout our state. But ALEC reached out to Jonathan Williams. I said, listen, I'm going to introduce this legislation. I need your help. I'm being asked to place amendments on this bill. I said, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this? So I appreciate their support, their staff. They actually kind of walked with me through this process. We did place one amendment on the bill, and it was just to clarify that when there's a dispute between parents and the government or a third party, the order is parents make no decisions, not the government, unless they have a compelling interest, And so our governor on June the 16th, she signed the bill into law. We had our ceremony.
Kay Ivey, right?
Yes, Governor Kay Ivey. It took 3 times to bring the bill to the floor because, when you talk about God interjecting, that's a spiritual battle. So we had a little issue on the floor the first time, and so we've had to carry the bill over. But we brought it back up and got it through the House into the Senate. Just passed the Senate, no problems, no issues, and just great and honored to have organizations such as ALEC that can help facilitate draft, conservative legislation. And I just want to highlight, this bill is not about Republicans or Democrats. No. This bill is strictly about saying parents they're the first educators. We've been mentally conditioned to think that the government or public schools or the teachers is the first educators, but no, parents is the first educators of our kids, and that's my bill. You just qualify that in black and white code of Alabama.
Lee, this is tremendous. He's in office for 2 years and gets an ESA bill through Alabama with the help of ALEC. I mean, that's exactly what this whole thing's all about, right?
It's power to the people and power to the parents. We want to play a clip for you. It's from the NEA president, Becky Pringle, who was in Orlando 2 weeks ago. We're going to play that last clip, number 5, and take a listen to this. We'd love your comment.
You can see it over here.
Purpose, NEA, you are those stars in the darkness. Your light will not be dimmed. Your purpose will drive you in a righteous fight for freedom because you know who you are. That's right. Yes. You know who you are. You are the NEA. Our mission is clear. We will advocate for the rights of education professionals, and we will change this world for our students with that inner fire burning. We will never bend. We will never be broken because we are the NEA, and we will always do what we must to be worthy of our students. Thank you, NEA, for all you do every day for our babies and for our colleagues and for your states and for this country. Onward, NEA! Onward!
My dad was a superintendent of schools and a pro-choice guy, and he sent me this clip because so many of his friends' kids are now superintendents. When she said, "We're here to change the world for our students," this is like a bridge too far. We don't know how we get there. A comment about a comment like that.
Well, I think goes back to why my legislation is so important, and I would encourage other states. We're the 18th state that passed a similar legislation. It's imperative that the states understand that there is an order, just like parents. It's once again the first teachers, not the government, not the National Education Association. And so we got to get back to the states' rights, 10th Amendment, and place legislation such as the parental rights legislation. Right. That's our shield. Unfortunately, you got what we just saw, that clip. That's out there. And so now the question is saying, what can we do to prevent or shield our parents' parental rights in our states and throughout the country? We can't depend and wait on Washington, D.C. We have to do it at the state level. So I just want to encourage people, other states out there, use ALEC's model legislation, codify that into your code. My plan next year is take the same legislation, introduce it as a constitutional amendment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then place it on the ballot in November 2024.
Make an initiative out of it.
And put it into our put it into the black and white of our Constitution, because unfortunately the government, I truly believe they think kids, other people's kids, is actually belong to them.
Yeah, they do.
I think someone made a statement, we have to be careful with this term, it takes a village to raise a child. The question is, who's the village? Is it the National Education Association? So I think it takes our community to support our kids and families and communities. But the village, I always tell people, be cautious about repeating that term that Hillary Clinton, I think, first maybe made a statement, it takes a village to raise a child. And that sounds good, but we got to be careful about saying it takes a village, because I'm saying, who's the village? The government.
Absolutely right. The issue has to resonate, not just in inner cities or suburbs. It's got to resonate everywhere, because we talked to an Iowa Speaker Pro Tem who said that when they passed their ESA bill, they expected 14,000 kids or parents to enroll in it. They had something like 30,000 people. I mean, what's been the reaction to the bill that you passed?
Well, unfortunately, you always have certain groups, entities try to take advantage of certain of legislation such as this. I was attacked by the transgender community, the LGBTQ+, saying this bill is an attack on them. And I just shared, I said, this bill has nothing to do with the transgender community or the LGBTQ. It's just simply saying God created an order for kids to have two parents, and if there's a dispute between the parents or the government, the parents make no decision, not the government.
Kenneth Pascal, Alabama's state representative, great to make your acquaintance. Thank you very much for your service to the country, and thank you for your service to the people of Alabama. You're a tremendous asset.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Thanks for having me on. That's just tremendous. Duane Patterson in for Hugh Hewitt. We'll be back to wrap things up right after the break. Stick around. America, Duane Patterson finishing up day one of our stint at the American Legislative Exchange Council, the 50th gathering of ALEC down here in Orlando. Hugh will be back tomorrow. I'm joined by Arizona State Senator to round things out by Jim Dotson. And Jim, welcome back to the Hugh Show. Good to have you here.
Good to be here. And just one small correction, Arkansas, not Arizona.
Well, that is a difference. That is a difference.
Yeah.
My relatives are from Arkansas. They would be ashamed of me for doing that. My ancestry comes from Salem Springs.
Oh yeah, that's about 20 minutes from me.
Northwest corner.
Yep, northwest corner.
The only part of Arkansas worth anything. Tell me what life is like under a governor in Arkansas that got some things put through this year. You had a massive ESA win this year.
Oh, it's been a phenomenal year for Arkansas. I was in the State House for 10 years. I'm 6 months into my first term in the State Senate.
Right.
And this first session with Sarah Huckabee Sanders as governor has been nothing short of incredible.
She's a force of nature.
We have seen tremendous wins, obviously, like you're talking about with the ESA. The education reform was not just an ESA, but it was an overall education reform package.
Explain to people what's in that so they know kind of the basics of bullet points in it.
Absolutely. So as a component of the education reform package she championed and pushed through, it included a lot of different things with a focus on literacy, a focus on the getting kids the foundational basis for learning and reading, especially by the time they're in the third grade. If they're not on grade level, just making some major incentives and investments in learning coaches and things like that for traditional public school students, which are still going to be, 80-90% of students, which is a large percentage of the state, but also giving options and opportunities for students that may not follow that traditional public school path, which more and more are looking at, virtual schools. Obviously, we still have a large percentage of charter schools, private schools, home schools, and the like. So making sure we have the availability of resources for parents to be able to direct the education of their individual students' needs, and however that student learns the best is really the opportunity that's in front of us. And over the course of the next 3 years, we will move toward universal eligibility for school options for all parents. So really it's empowering parents, and the education freedom accounts is what we're calling them, that parents can qualify for. This will be year one of that. 1.5% of the students in the state could qualify for them in year one. Mm-hmm. It could go to 3% next year in year two, and then universal eligibility for students in year three and beyond. So all the students in the state could have the opportunity to take up to 90% of the funds that go toward a traditional public school, put those into an account, kind of like a health savings account, that can be only spent on educational services for that student. So things like tuition, tutoring, books, fees, uniforms, things of that nature that are educational expenses that student can specifically have for their educational unique learning capabilities, whatever they need to have directed for them personally.
This may be a controversial statement. Arizona set the standard. They set the bar really high with their bill. Florida did theirs. Ohio has now done theirs. I think Arkansas took the bar that Arizona had, and I think they raised the bar a little bit. I think Arkansas is now the standard, right? That's the one by which all else is measured.
I mean, I like to think so as well, but
I mean, just objectively, it kind of is now, isn't it?
It is definitely. I think all the states are competing now, and this is obviously an idea whose time has come for many.
Agreed.
So we're seeing more and more states start to jump on. West Virginia took the lead 2 years ago, and then Arizona passed last year, and then I think we're up to 7, 8, 9 states maybe that have passed some sort of universal school choice in the last.
Yeah, just the indoctrination part. There's a prohibition indoctrinating students.
Right.
How do you enforce something like that? What do you do about that?
Well, that's one of the things that is continuously going to be a battle and a fight to try to figure out what are those when we see things that are happening, how do you address those? The Department of Education right now is also looking at specific rules on implementation of the law, and how we wrote the broad framework, but we gave them the ability to write specific rules in the implementation of it at more of a granular level. And so once those rules have been written, we'll come back and review those, approve those rules, and then probably put those into statutory form in future years.
Jim Dotson, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for closing out a terrific first day at ALEC.
Thank you.
See you in the conference. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Harley. Thank you very much, Lee Habeeb, for sitting in with me today. Duane Patterson in for Hugh. I will be back tomorrow in my normal place. Hugh will be right here. Stick around for the next edition of the Hugh Show tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.